Shalom Aleichem and Happy Hanukkah, Rabotai. Mishnah Yomi continues in the 11th chapter of Shabbat, Mishnah Bet. Yesterday we began the 11th chapter talking about different rishuyot, the domains, the types of space, legabe Shabbat, regarding Shabbos and transferring from one to another. And we left off talking about throwing objects from one Rishut Yachid, a private domain, to another Rishut Yachid, but with the Rishut Rabim, the public domain, the public thoroughfare, like a big street in the middle. Now, Mishnah Bet says, Ketzad, how does that work? So it's basically picking up where Mishnah Aleph left off. So it illustrates the case here. Shtei Gezuz Traut. We have two balconies, and each balcony is sticking out of the wall of a house. And importantly, each balcony is a Rishut Yachid because it is at least 4x4 tefachim square and has a wall 10 tefachim tall. So we have these two balconies, zo keneged zo, and they are opposite one another, b'rshut harabim, and they're above the public domain, the public street. Hamoshit, someone who passes an item over, v'hazorek, or someone who throws an item over, mizo lezo, from one balcony to the other, pater. So this is the opinion we saw of the Chachamim in the previous Mishnah, in Mishnah Aleph, that throwing an item over the Rishus Harabim from one Rishut Yachid to the next Rishut Yachid, one private domain to another, over the public domain, is pater. Now Mishnah Bet goes on to bring a variation of this case. Hayu shtehen bidiota achat. If both of these balconies were on the same floor, the same side here, they're both on the same building instead of being on opposite sides of the street. Hamoshit chayev, somebody who passes an item from one balcony to the next, and he's passing from one walled-off Rishut Yachid to another walled-off Rishut Yachid. He's going over the wall of the balcony, and he's passing it over the public street, chayev. So it would be chayev chatat if he does this by mistake on Shabbat. Hazorek, but someone who throws it, is pater. So what's the distinction here? The Mishnah explains, shekach haita avodat Leviim. This was the manner of the way the Leviim did their avoda. And here their avoda is dealing with the boards of the Mishkan, not just an avoda in the sense of a malacha, of a constructive work on Shabbos. It was literally what they were doing to transport the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the wilderness, in the Midbar. So what would they do? They'd have shtei agalot, they'd have two wagons, zo achar zo. One was behind the other, b'rshut rabim. They're both like in the public street. They're both in the same lane, basically, one behind another. And moshitin hakroshim mizo lezo. And they would pass over, the Levi standing in one wagon would pass the board, the keresh, for the Mishkan to the next Levi in the next wagon of volozargim. But they never throw it. So what's going on is they were davka standing in the wagon, which was a Rishut Yachid, and they're passing the keresh, the board, to the next Levi in the next wagon, which is also Rishut Yachid, and they're passing it over the Rishut Rabim, the public domain. So that's exactly how they did the avoda and the malacha to transport the Mishkan, and therefore that is chayev on Shabbat if somebody does this from one balcony to another, but they would never throw the boards. So throwing the boards is pater. That's not how the Leviim did it. Mishnah Bet continues, Huliat Habor, somebody who scoops out earth and he makes a hole. So it's like a depression in the ground, v'hasela, or a rock, shehen gvohin asara, and these things are 10 tall, v'rachban are ba, and 4 wide, meaning they have an area of 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, and either a depth, if it's the bore, the hole, or a height, if it's the rock, of 10 tefachim. Hanotel mehen, somebody who takes from them, hanoten al gaban, or places an object on top of them or into them, chayev. He's chayev because now he's transferring from the public domain to a private domain. These items, this depression in the ground or this rock boulder above the ground, they're the minimum size for Rishut Yachid, so transferring from the public street to these places is chayev. But pachot miken, a smaller area, pater. If it has smaller dimensions, for example, the hole's only 9 tefachim deep, or the rock is a 3x3 tefach rock, not 4x4, so then it's not large enough to be a domain. Mishnah Gimel brings a new case about transferring And we should know also that not just transferring one domain to another, but also moving an item 4 amot in the Reshut Rabim itself is considered a hotzah, or it's considered transferring, and it's chayiv. So what's going on here is hazorek 4 amot. So when he throws an item 4 amot in the Reshut Harabim, in the public domain, bakotel, and it hits a wall. He's throwing something squishy and sticks to the wall. So what's going on is lamala misar tefachim. If it hits the wall above 10 tefachim, kizorek bavir. It's as if he threw it into the air, and he's going to be pater. Remember, we learned in Mishnah Aleph that the airspace of Reshut Rabim only goes up to 10 tefachim, whereas the airspace of Reshut Yachid, a private domain, goes up forever. So lamata misar tefachim. If he throws this thing and it sticks to the wall below 10 tefachim, kizorek ba'aret. It's like he threw it onto the ground. And if he threw it 4 amot, he's going to be chayiv. Now, the Mishnah talks about the kavana, the intention of someone throwing. Hazorek ba'aretz 4 amot chayiv. Someone who throws along the ground, even if it bounces, and it moves 4 amot, he's chayiv. But zarek letoch 4 amot, when it galgel chutz le 4 amot, so he threw it. Really, what he's trying to do, he's trying to throw it 2 or 3 amot, but it happened to keep rolling. He wasn't trying to bounce this thing and have it keep going along. He only wanted to throw it 2 or 3 amot, and it kept being mitgalgel, rolling along, chutz, until it passed outside the 4 amot, further than 4 amot pater, because he didn't have the kavana, the intention, the mindset to move this item 4 amot. Chutz le 4 amot, he was trying to throw it beyond 4 amot, but it galgel l'toch 4 amot, and it bounced back and landed less than 4 amot from the thrower. Chayev. He's still chayev, even though he didn't move the item more than 4 amot, but he intended to move the item more than 4 amot when he threw it, and therefore he's chayev for the melacha. Shkoyach Rabotai, Hag Sameach.